Okay. So can you understand this? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so hazard can be everywhere. And then when you are exposing yourself to that hazard, meaning that you know it's there, but you are facing it, meaning that you have some risk. Okay, so you can really get rid of the risk by putting yourself quite far from the hazard. Okay, if you have a small fire, for example, and that's for it to becoming a big fire, I think that could be dangerous to many people, is actually by shutting it down. Okay, putting it off. Okay, so but in many cases, so the risk is actually the likelihood that a person may be harmed or suffer adverse health effect if they are exposed themselves to an hazard. Okay, so if you are exposing yourself to a hazard, I think you have risk there. Okay, so this is some concept, and we found that in many situations there is always risk because there is always hazards everywhere, even though maybe the hazard is quite small, but it can be bigger, and then it could create some danger, and that danger may also cause some losses. Okay, losses. So in any case, I think risk cannot be completely eliminated. We can try to minimize it a little bit up to a certain levels. So in many cases, I think we can live with what we call acceptable risk. Something, okay. So for example, we are all bound to die soon, or sooner or later. Is that right? Okay. And during that COVID, I think we can have a risk of catching COVID-19, and because the hazard is there. But maybe you will be able to minimize the risk by having, maybe by wearing mask and try to keep a distance from many people, and you stay in the house, for example, and maybe also you can improve your immune system, or by having good meals, vitamins, for example, and having enough rest, and even also by going to the for example, by having some exercise. Okay. So some people say that flight safety if you are free from hazard, but that's not possible because hazard is everywhere, and if you don't have any risk, and that's not also possible because risk is always there. So what we could, and some people say that flight safety if we can perform flight with acceptable risk. Okay, so if the risk is acceptable and the level of acceptability can be different from one case to the other, and in many cases, in like for example in certification, the risk is going to be kept to a minimum up to when the likelihood is quite small. Okay, so for example, the likelihood of having a catastrophic failure or catastrophic accidents, I think, should be minimized to 1 in 1 billion, 1 in 1 billion flights, or 1 in 1 billion flight hours. And they think that this is a number of the frequency or likelihood which is quite small, and they consider it safety, because there is no way we can actually avoid what we call a fatal or catastrophic accidents. It is going to happen sooner or later, okay? Because there is no perfect, what we call perfect operations, and we are not living in a perfect world as well, and we are not going to be able to create anything perfect, okay? Something that is cannot fail, okay? So we have to think about some acceptable level of risk again, and this is actually the premises that is actually adopted by certification, okay? So they look at it, and when they call it safe, if, for example, the probability of any conditions that will create that dangerous situation can be kept to a certain level of probability, okay? Okay, operation with acceptable risk. And some people also think about flight safety is actually preservation of resources, okay? And by resources, meaning that any source or any supply from which benefit is produced. So typically in our examples, that resources can be materials, in this case can be the aircraft or any equipment that we put in installed in an aircraft, and it could be the energy, meaning that the fuel and the electricity that we have in the aircraft, and the services, of course, the staff, knowledge, and other assets that is transformed to produce the benefit, and in the process may be consumed or made unavailable. So these are the resources, okay? So the reason why we call that flight safety is actually a preservation of resources, in that if we can fly and operate the aircraft safely, meaning that we can keep the resources for later use and keep using the same resources all the time. So the resources is preserved for future use repeatedly, okay? And that resources can be the aircraft, the flight crew, the cabin crew, and also some other things as well, okay? So when you think about safety, meaning that you are preserving the resources that you have. And it is not actually flight safety, but I think we can talk about safety in general as well, okay? Any questions? Hello?
Not for me, sir.
Okay. And the other definition is actually flight safety is a method of controlling costs. We have discussed earlier that the cost of accidents, for example, or the cost of unsafety is actually something quite enormous, okay? And that could be uncontrollable, okay? Sometimes you might lose only your equipment, in this case your aircraft, but in many cases you are not only losing your aircraft, but you might lose some people, and that could be quite costly as well, okay? And in terms of what we call the recent accidents of Boeing Max, I think the cost is even more much bigger than that, because the aircraft is grounded and Boeing actually losing a lot of money because they cannot sell the airplanes, but also they also lose some money because they need to spend money to face some lawsuit, okay, and also some hearing in the congressional hearing in the United States, and because they need to defend their stance. And I think one of the costs is actually damage to the public image, okay? because they think now Boeing is actually not a safe as a company, and because of that, and not only Boeing Max is suffering, but I think that also happens to the other aircraft that is produced by Boeing as well. So in this case, their competitor Airbus is actually gaining momentum to have much more sales than Boeing. Okay, so when you fly safe, I think you are actually controlling your cost to a minimum. Only the cost of maintaining safety. Okay, and that's mean that you might invest in your operations, and you have to, and that will be the only cost of your operations are actually the repetitive cost of fuel and the flight, the crew costs, and also the maintenance costs, and some other costs as well. Okay, but you are not adding anything that is not controllable. So all your costs can be controllables because you can control your the amount of fuel that you can burn. You can control the cost of your crew, and then you can control the cost of, for example, the maintenance, and you can control some other costs as well. But accident costs cannot be controlled. Okay, so method, and this is one example, the airline example. So the direct costs, as we discussed earlier, is loss of aircraft and loss of life. But as it given here, it is actually the iceberg, in which you are only talking about the tip of the iceberg, which is something feasible. But underneath the water, the surface of the water, you will see all much bigger costs, which is quite hidden in a way, and that's what we call indirects. And that indirect cost can be third-party liabilities. Maybe you are losing direct revenues because of the ticket sales is not is going to be slow, and also maybe people are actually avoiding your airlines, and you might need some diversions to replace the aircraft that is actually that has accidents. Okay, and you can have flight cancellations. Okay, and that also costs you some money. And also we have, maybe in some cases, I think you might prepare and provide food and lodging to the passenger who might be stranded. Okay, because their aircraft is not coming. Okay, so that will be something, and of course it depends on where you are. Okay, and also replacement labor and overtimes, because you might need to replace not only the crew, okay, the crew and the people who are actually in that fatal accidents aircraft, but also sometimes people who are actually quite down because of the accidents. So you might need to encourage them as well. So I remember when these accidents of Boeing Max in the Sea of Java. Okay, so we tried to interview the maintenance technicians who did the maintenance and check the aircraft the previous night and the previous morning. Okay, and in that morning, so, and it's very difficult to get hold of him because he is actually a little bit traumatized because of that experience, because he felt that he was responsible for the accidents, maybe because the aircraft was not working properly, because the equipment that he maintained in the early morning and late night during that time. So So we have to wait for about 3 weeks until he was ready to answer our question and got interviewed by KNKT. See, so during that time, he actually got difficult to work. So the psychologist asked the company that he will be let alone for a while and get over the situation over time. Okay. And damage to public image, and this is something people are afraid to fly, and even maybe they are afraid to fly with your airlines, or maybe they are afraid to fly with the aircraft. Okay. And then we have management and supervisions, time that has to be spent to recover, and also in public relations to explain to the victims' family. And also we spend a lot of time for accident and incident investigations, and it can be quite long as well. Just remember, for the max, I think it took us about maybe about 13 months to finish the investigations. So every now and then we ask Lion, and we ask many parties, and even we discuss quite a lot with Boeing, and also with NTSB of United States, and even FAA. And that's, of course, I think we have something. They came to Indonesia for 3 times. We have a discussion here, and we went to Seattle in Washington maybe about 3 times as well. So, and that's quite costly because the travel and also the spending in the United States is quite expensive. And of course, and the same thing that happened also when they come here to Indonesia as well. So that's investigation might be quite costly, and that's sometimes hidden, and nobody even know about it. Okay, so we remember to look for the black box, for example. It costs us a lot of money, and sometimes we already found it difficult. And the same thing with the accident of Sriwijaya Air SJ182. We have a lot of problems. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think we spent around maybe about 50 billion rupiah just to get hold of the black box. And in this case, I think we are losing the cockpit voice recorder, the CVR. Okay, so this is something, and the CVR is quite important for us to get hold, because when we listen to the conversation, we will be able to actually understand a little bit about the situation in the cockpit, something that we might miss just looking at the data that we found and collected in the flight data recorder. Okay. Okay. So there are many things. Of course, poor morale is also a girl, and not only affecting the people who are directly involved in the accidents, but it could also affect the whole organization. Okay, the whole organization. Okay, so when you operate safely, meaning that all these costs can be controlled. You will be able to avoid all these costs altogether. Okay, so you are only spending money for your cost of operation itself. Okay. Any questions?
Hello, sir. Hello.
Yeah, Asia.
Yeah, I'm Asia, and I have a question to be. It's not regarding the class material. Remember when yesterday di akhir kelas my friend said kalau ada kelas yang bentrok pagi
Oh,
ini.
yes. Okay. I think we better spend time here.
Iya.
Yeah.
So actually itu bentroknya pagi ini jam 8 sampai 9. Kita ada kelas kindin juga. Terus di kelas inter ini ada 9 orang. Apa namanya? Terus kita have a proposal kalau jadi hari Senin itu kita jadiin 2 jam. Terus pagi ini 1 jam gitu, Pak.
Yeah, it's okay if everybody agrees. So we start at 11 until maybe about 1 o'clock. That will be okay as well. For me, I think I don't have any problem. If all agrees.
Yeah, I
How
mean,
about the others?
tapi, yeah.
Any objection to the proposal of Asia and friends? So we have class on Monday, 11 o'clock until 1 o'clock. So we have almost 2 hours. But then we have only 1 hour in on what is it? Today, okay, on Tuesday. Any problem with that?
Ada yang nge-object katanya kalau 10 sampai 12 gimana, Pak?
10 sampai 12. So
yeah.
Actually I have class until 10. And then it will be very tiring for me to continue because we start at 7 o'clock until 10, and then I have to continue until 12. That will be 5 hours.
Oh yeah, that's true.
The good thing that I'm sitting here, but if I'm in class, I will be standing and I will be talking at the top of my voice all the time. But here with Zooms, I don't have to shout.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So,
okay. Yeah, I think it's okay. Jam 11 sampai 1. Tadi
okay.
teman saya udah bilang nggak apa-apa.
All agree or not? I think if you have an suggestion, just raise your hands. If not, I just assume that everybody agrees. Please speak up. Hello?
I personally agree, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Eduardo. You are a good friend. Okay. So I just assume that everybody agrees. So we start at 11 until 1 o'clock on Monday. And then, okay, any Manav? Oh.
I agree, sir.
Okay, agree. Okay. Okay, I misunderstood. Okay, so we agree, agree. So we can, but today we have to keep the schedule first until 9 o'clock. So for those of you who might need to go to the other class, I think you are allowed to leave early. Okay, but make sure don't leave this class but not getting into the other class. So I'm going to ask Pak Bambang and also Pak Pak Leo if you are actually in that class. Okay, we have to check. Okay, anyway, so we continue the ones that we okay. So, and the other definition is actually what we call flight safety is no incidents and no accidents. Okay, so incident can happen, as I said. Okay, incident can happen when you are exposing yourself to your hazard, and when you are, or sometimes you are exposing yourself to risk. Okay, so incidents and accidents, this is definition by based on ICAO Annex 13, and this is the formal definition. We call it accidents if the occurrence, okay, during and associated with the operation of flights will involve at least one person is fatally or seriously injured, or it could be that the aircraft sustained damage or structural failure, or maybe the aircraft is actually completely missing or completely inaccessible. So these are at least one of these conditions involved in occurrence of operation of airplanes, and we call that occurrence will be, or the event, as accidents. But there will be some other occurrence or events, it is that we don't call as accidents, but that characterized as well, because I think it will affect safety, okay, safety operations. And this is what we call incidents. So there is no danger, or in a way, there is no victims, okay, we don't lose anybody, and then there is nobody got injured, but of course, okay, and we don't lose the aircraft, and there is no structural damage to the aircraft, but it's still a danger, it's still what we call unsafe event. Some example can be that you are actually maybe you land overrunning the runway, you landed overrunning land, so that's something. So you don't have any damage to the aircraft, there is nobody in the airplanes or outside the airplanes that got injured, so everything was okay, but still the landing of run is still called as incidents, because of it also, it will create some dangerous situation as well, okay. And this is what we call. So if you have a hazard, okay, if you have hazard, of course you are exposing yourself, you have risk. But if you are exposing yourself to hazard and risk, you will have incidents. And in many cases, I think incident can happen many times. Okay, remember I told you yesterday that unsafe condition or accidents or danger is actually doesn't happen what do we call immediately, okay. There should be some indications beforehand, and this is what we call, sometimes that indication can be reflected in incidents, okay. But that incidents, if it is not dealt with, okay, and they are not tendered or attended, that will create some serious incident or near miss, they call it, something more serious. Maybe you will get some injury, which is not maybe, and the injury may not be serious, but still, I think you will have some people got injured, even though they are not serious, okay. And this is what we call serious incidents, okay. And sometimes it can cause accidents. So you see that here you have accident is actually the tip of the iceberg here, and we have plenty of serious incident beforehand, and we have even more incident beforehand, and we have more latent condition. And we call it latent because they are actually what we call work errors that is not attended. Something, okay, it happens, something wrong in the operations, some people make a mistake, and some operators did something wrong, or even they didn't follow, for example, procedure, but nothing happens as a consequences, okay. But if they are not properly managed, these observed work errors can create incidents, okay, or can lead to incidents. And these incidents, if they are not taken care of, or even they are not investigated, and they might lead to some serious incidents. And this, again, if all these are not properly investigated and properly dealt with, and they will create incident. So this is becoming what we call accident pyramids, And this is done by the research of Henrich. And he said that if for any accidents, we might have previous 30 serious incidents, and we might have 300 incidents and about 3,000 observed records. So the numbers may not be quite exact in a way, because actually it could be in some range. For example, it could be maybe about 10 to 40 serious incidents, or maybe about 100 to 400 incidents, and about 1,000 to 4,000 incidents. So, but at least we see that if you are not careful about the events, okay, and we keep repeating and allow that to happen, so we are bound to have accident in the future. Okay, so all these work errors should be observed and should be dealt with properly, and that will be some operational challenges. So just in case we have accident and serious incidents, of course, that also needs some investigations, okay, some investigation, so that will be able us to actually have some safety actions based on the study that we can learn from the accidents. Any questions? Okay. Okay, I think we better stop for 5 minutes. So we have a break. So it will allow you to go, if you want to go to the toilet, you can go to the toilet. So if you have any, so, and all of you, Aisha and everything, you can leave if you want to. So you can join the other class, okay? And I think we can continue again at 8 o'clock.
Oke, kalau gitu saya leave dulu ya, Pak. Terima kasih.
Izin live dulu, Pak. Makasih.
Izin live juga, Pak. Makasih, Pak.
Okay. Shall we continue?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is another definition of flight safety. Is actually if we can accomplish the operation as planned. Okay, so we have the planning, and we can execute and perform the operation just exactly as we plan it. So this is one example, and that's meaning that we can call it safe. Okay, but okay, why it doesn't? Okay, so this is one example. Okay, that sometimes, many times, the flight cannot be executed according to plan, and this is one example in Asiana accidents in San Francisco. Okay, international, because and it was in July 2013. So the flights, the aircraft struck a seawall at San Francisco, and when it was investigated by NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board of United States, they determined that the airplane crashed because the airplane is actually descending below the visual glide path due to the flight crew mismanagement of approach and inadequate monitoring of the speed. So they are actually flying too low, and then they are descending too fast, but then they don't monitor speed, meaning that maybe the speed is much lower than expected. Okay, and that's problems is due to because the crew insufficient monitoring of airspeed indications. So because maybe they expect too much, maybe they are tired, or maybe because of the workloads, it just happened, or maybe because they also have some fatigue because a long flight from Seoul. Okay, and maybe because they are too much dependent on automation that is provided by the airplanes. And this happens because the co-pilots, who are actually the pilot in command in that accident flights, was actually learning. Okay. He is actually an experienced pilot, but he never land the airplane into San Francisco airports. And San Francisco airport is a little bit peculiar. I don't know whether you've been to to Denpasar. It's actually actually they have a wall because quite close to the city. To the sea. So they have a sea wall. Okay, just in one end of the runway. So when the aircraft is actually flying too low, I think what really happens, I think the landing gear struck the seawall, and then I think it's turning upside down, okay, and also caught fire. Okay. So 3 of the 2,091 person, okay, fatally injured, 40 passenger, and 8 of the 12 flight attendants and 1 of 4 flight crew member actually received serious injuries, okay, because of that accidents. Okay, even though there are many people survive, but I think there are many people survive, but only 3 actually died in that in that accidents, but we have some serious injuries as well. Okay, and this is what really happens. Okay, just so we can just watch the video. So maybe, if possible, you just listen to the reports. Okay, I just try to increase a little bit of the microphone so the speaker can give a better sound and much louder than expected. Okay. So
In this
you can
still
see,
image, the autopilot is on. The airplane had been
okay,
vectored to
I
a
just need to
14-mile
explain
long
a little
final.
bit. So this is supposed, the aircraft is supposed to follow the green line. Okay, but it's okay if you are actually flying a little bit below. Okay, as long as you are not below this red line, and you can. It is also you can fly a little bit higher as long as you are not higher than the white line. Okay, so this is the distance from the threshold, the end of the runway. Okay, and this is the altitude. Okay, the altitude. So that one, and then you can see here they are approaching runways. Okay, and this one. So you can see the stick here and also the thrust levels, and they are already idles, so they are reducing. And then the flaps is at 5 angle, and you can see here this is the altitude and this is the speed. Okay, and some other information in the instrumentation here as well. Okay, so this is okay. So please listen and then watch, and then we can have discussion later what really happens.
Approach, and through a sequence of speed and configuration changes, the flight had diverged well above the desired glide path and was descending too slowly.
So here,
as the animation begins, the landing gear was extended, and the pilot monitoring remarked that they were a little high.
so this is some voice here in the cockpit's
The pilot flying said he
microphone.
would descend more and selected 1,500 feet per minute descent rate in the autopilot. As you can see in the profile view, this did begin to bring the airplane back toward the desired glide path.
So you see that the aircraft is descending.
However, about 6 miles from the runway, the selected descent rate was set back to 1,000 feet per minute. The airplane was still well above the desired glide path.
So they are not going down quite slow.
The selected
a little
altitude
bit
was
slow.
changed to 3,000 feet to prepare the autopilot in case a go-around was needed. The airplane passed the 5-mile point near the final approach fix, about 400
So
feet
here-
higher than desired, and the crew began slowing the airplane. The pilot flying called for flaps 30, but the pilot monitoring noted they were still a little too fast for flaps 30.
So this is actually what happened here, because the captain pilot, who is sitting on the left, okay, he is actually monitoring the flights, and the first officer or the co-pilot is actually flying the airplanes because he is actually in training. Okay, he is an experienced pilot, but he has never gone into San Francisco before, and because of the San Francisco aircraft is actually a little bit different from normal ones. Okay, in which you can see that the runway is a little bit higher than the surface of the water. Okay, so they need to be trained in order for them to be able to land safely in, and this is what happened. So the captain pilots actually thought that the flap is actually is set to 30. Okay, even though maybe they say that this is something, and then they have to check the speed. They check the speed.
The pilot flying switched the autopilot to flight level change mode, which did not help with the descent and resulted in the airplane initiating a climb to the 3,000-foot altitude that was previously set.
So they're
To
setting the
prevent the
speed,
climb, the
the
pilot
altitude at
disconnected the
3,000.
autopilot and retarded the thrust levers to idle. This resulted in the autothrottle transitioning to hold mode.
So you see
In
that
hold
here
mode,
that
the auto
the
throttle does
aircraft
not
is actually
control
still
airspeed.
flying above the desired glide slope.
Descent rate increased to about 1,500 feet per minute, and the observer pilot noted sink rate.
So now it's the pilot decided to sink, but descending too fast, and that's the reason
About
they call
1.4
it
miles
sink
from
rate.
the runway,
Okay.
the airplane descended through the desired glide path and slowed through the target approach speed. The pitch attitude steadily increased as the pilot pulled back on the column in an effort to maintain the glide path. The airplane was well below glide path.
So
and
now
airspeed
it's
was
even
15
now
knots
the
below
aircraft is
desired
below the
approach
red
speed
line.
and rapidly dropping. 11 seconds before impact, an audible alert sounded because the airspeed was too low. 4 seconds later, the pilot monitoring advanced the thrust levers, followed by stick shaker activation and a verbal call to go around. These
And this
actions were
one,
too late, and the
okay.
main gear and the
So one
underside
of
of
the
the
landing
aft
gear
fuselage
struck
struck
the
the
seawall, and this is the video, the real video by the CCTV. See that? And caught fire. So it's actually hit the ground quite fast, and also almost dropped because of the spiral motions, and that's why the reason why they have even one of the and that's the reason why we have so many wreckage all over the places. Okay, so this is, they plan it really well because they set everything, they depending on the automations, and they set everything, but during the executions they didn't monitor, and then the speed, and they didn't monitor the flight altitude, for example, and that's happened here. Okay, so in many cases I think we have problems with these situations in which you can have a proper plan, but in the execution it is not exactly as we expected. So the NDTAB study said that inadequate monitoring and challenging played by a role in 84% of major airline accidents, and that's due to crew error. Okay, so mostly I think this kind of accidents is dominated by crew errors, and they, of course, this is becoming the contributing factor for the accidents. A study by ICAO, for example, they found that inadequate monitoring is actually involved in about 50% of controlled flight into terrain, or CFIT, okay, CFIT accidents, in which you can struck the ground, and that's what we call it, controlled flight into terrain. And even the Flight Safety Foundation, which is actually originally found by Boeing, they found that 63% of approach and landing accident involve inadequate monitoring and cross-checking. So this is a mistake that happens many times, but they are not properly addressed. Okay, and I think in combination with some other work errors and some other misses, sometimes some system failures, and of course it will create accidents. Okay, and people say, okay, if you maintain the aircraft well and then you can release it, maybe that's, I think you are trying to avoid, and then you will be able to fly safely. But in general, I think this is not always the case. Of course, one of the prerequisites requirements for having a safe flight, of course, by having good maintenance release. But in many cases, I think, again, this is an example. People do mistakes in their release of the airplanes, and that's cause an accident. Okay, so since this is happening, so maintenance release records the legal airworthiness status of the aircraft. And when a person issue maintenance release, I think he is actually sure that the aircraft is all the required maintenance that has to be performed in the aircraft has already been performed, and that the maintenance is actually performed based on the approved maintenance data. Basically, this will be based on the manuals provided by the manufacturer, and also approved by the authority. Okay, and also they consider that the aircraft was considered airworthy at the time the maintenance release was issued, and of course, and that will be valid for a certain period of time. Okay, so the three conditions is actually valid when maintenance release is issued. But in many cases, I think this is not necessarily so, because sometimes some flaw may happen in the process of maintenance release. You didn't do a lot properly, and then you release the aircraft not in the right condition. And again, we have some example of it. Is actually what happened to many accidents in Indonesia. I can see you some example like in what we call AirAsia accidents in Bangka. I think it was in 2000. I forgot about. Is it 14? I think, yeah, it was 2014. And then recent accidents of Lion Max. Again, we have problems here with the angle of attack vanes. Okay, angle of attack vanes, and also and these are some example of I think they released the airplane not in a proper maintenance, good maintenance. Okay, so this is an example. Okay, just in Naha airports. Let me see. Okay, here. So the aircraft catch fire during taxi to the terminals. They land safely, but then it catch fire while it is taxiing from the end of the runway to the terminals. And that fire was created because some missing bolts, okay, or not missing bolt, loose bolts, okay, loose in the sled, okay, in one of the wing, and then you just see here. I think there was a few leakage, and because of the hot engines, I think the engine got fire because of the fuel. Okay. Even though it was released, but not in exactly best condition when it is operated. Okay.
On August 20th, 2007.
Oh, sorry. I tried to increase the sound because the sound is really low here.
On August 20th, 2007, a Boeing 737-800 operated by China Airlines departed from Taiwan and had an uneventful flight to Naha Airport, Okinawa, Japan. The 737-800 employs a high-lift system that includes leading-edge slats which enhance takeoff and landing performance. These slats move on tracks which retract into the wing leading edge until contact
So it's
with the
supposed to be
downstop
stopped in this
assembly.
condition because of the
When
downstop
retracted,
assembly.
the slat tracks are stored in housings which are only large enough to accommodate the slat track. The track housing itself is an integrated part of the wing fuel tank and extends through the front spar into the main fuel tank.
So this is supposed to
Approximately
be
month
a
prior to
proper
the
stop.
accident, the number 5 slat can had been inspected and reworked in accordance with a fleet-wide Boeing service letter. It was believed by investigators that a washer had been omitted during reassembly following this maintenance activity. The bolt assembly can be seen here as part of the downstop. The washer was intended to prevent the bolt assembly from passing
So
through the downstop,
one washer is
since the
missing,
nut is
so
smaller than the hole
it
in
cannot
the
stop.
downstop
Okay.
assembly. Investigators believe that at some time between the earlier
So it landed
maintenance action
safely,
and this
but
flight,
then
the
during
bolt
this time, I
assembly
think
migrated out of the downstop assembly and fell into the slat
that
track
loose
housing.
washer.
With the bolt assembly lying inside the track housing, upon
So when
flight retraction,
the flap
the
is
track
retracted,
pushed the bolt
it
assembly
doesn't
through the bottom
stop,
of the
and
housing,
then
penetrating the main fuel tank,
puncture
which resulted in a fuel
the,
tank
the
breach.
the fuel tank.
Leaking fuel migrated to the leading edge of the wing and was carried aft by airflow during airplane taxi. This photo was taken from the penetrated fuel tank after the accident occurred. As shown, the entire bolt assembly was driven into the fuel tank. After arriving at the designated parking position,
So
leaking
during this
fuel began
taxi, I
pooling
think
inside the aircraft.
the
Ground personnel
the wing
observed
is
this
actually on
leaking
fire,
fuel coming from the
and
right
the
side of the
engine is on
aircraft
fire.
and immediately contacted the flight crew
But
via the cockpit intercom
fortunately,
system,
they
advising them of
managed
the
to
situation.
evacuate the passenger.
During taxi,
Okay.
and while the engine was still running at idle, leaking fuel was not able to reach the hot engine tailpipe or brakes, as the cool engine fan exhaust prevented fuel migration at these hot areas. Upon engine shutdown, the fuel was able to drip onto the tailpipe of the engine and onto the hot brakes, resulting in ignition. Flames then quickly spread back to the aircraft, which was eventually completely destroyed by the fire. The airplane was successfully evacuated at the first indication of fire. There were no fatalities or serious injuries. The first picture shows the aircraft during the fire. The second picture shows the number 5 slat track housing following the fire.
Okay. Dispatch is actually when you release the airplane for operations. Okay, you release the airplane, and if you have dispatched it well, meaning that you have a proper planning and everything was okay, and your aircraft is actually in very good conditions, hopefully that you will be able to operate the airplane and land it safely at destinations. Okay, and this is essentially dispatcher, what they call a flight operation officer. What they do is actually one is to prepare flight plans and briefings. Okay, and they prepare the flight plan for the airplanes, for the flight crew to performs, and also they provide briefings to the flight crew. I think the briefings will contain something like maybe about weather conditions and certain information that the flight crew needs to know. Okay, so and the second ones, they also handle disruptions. If something happened with the airplane, for example, during the operations, maybe they got some what we call alternates, and we call some deviated from the original flight plans because of some issues. It could be technical or it could be some weather conditions, and in that case, I think they are actually helping the pilots to make decisions by providing a better plan and maybe some scenario for avoiding dangerous situation. Okay, so and also when the airplanes, the flight cannot depart, okay, as schedules, I think they needs to be diverted and everything, and that's the jobs that the dispatcher or the flight operation officer will perform. Okay, so these are the things. Okay, and I just give you some example here. This is Turkish Airlines, and this is a little bit short. I think it's only 2 minutes, so I just give you the. Okay, sorry, why is it?
Turkish Airlines flight dispatchers work around the clock, sharing responsibility with pilots to ensure a safe and speedy flight every time.
We are checking before flight weather maps and weather reports for all airports on en route and destination airport. Sometimes even it is less economic than the other routes. We choose the safety routes.
Reacting at a moment's notice to unpredictable situations, flight dispatchers are always on hand to intervene and assist.
Sometimes very bad conditions happen and we cannot expecting to land destination airport. So suddenly we need to choose an alternate airport. And we have to give this information to the captain urgently.
Their quick decisions on the ground are critical for safety in the air.
Every day you're doing the same job, but you feel excited when you do this. And you understand how you are important in this situation.
It's not only the weather they have to keep on top of. Sudden political changes or conflict situations can also pose a threat to aircraft. Quick and careful decisions are critical.
The last time, the closest one is this Malaysian crash in Ukraine. Our flight from Tokyo to Istanbul was in the air. We directly contact with captain.
1023 passing 7,400 now.
And we give him a route avoiding Ukraine airspace. We change route directly and we calculate how many fuel he required and he followed this route. There would be no problem.
Turkish Airlines flight dispatchers anticipate problems, ensuring potential emergencies are transformed into relaxed and comfortable flights.
Okay, so this is dispatcher. So see a lot of preparation during flights. Okay, when they reach the operations, they perform flight planning and everything. Something that, and also if something wrong with during the execution of the flight, okay, and they also make some support at one. So he just mentioned about during this accident of Malaysian Airlines in Ukraine. Okay, actually another aircraft actually flying from Tokyo to Istanbul by Turkish Airlines, and they provide some deviations to avoiding Ukrainian airspace. And this is one example. Okay, so another definition is actually what we call comply and conform to the rules and regulation. And this is maybe quite related to the course of this airworthiness. This because these two terms are quite important to remember, and I hope that you will be able to understand it quite a little bit, because one is actually what we call compliance or comply, and the other one is conform or conformity. And actually, when we look at it, it's actually we have established some guidelines and some specifications, and then we have to comply with that one. And this is actually forms two basic or important aspects of certification requirements. You need to comply, and comply to what we call comply to regulations and to comply to procedure. Okay, comply to procedure. So you need to follow procedure that is set for your operations, and also procedure of how you actually design an airplanes, and procedure of how you actually execute some activities. So you need to comply with that one. And that procedure is actually based on some standard and some regulations. Okay, so you need to comply. And the second one is actually what we call conformity. Conformity is actually actions of how you compare your products or articles in that case, okay, and that it will follow or completely in agreement with the standard or authority that you do. Okay, and in some other cases we call it that conformity to the specification of the design. Okay, or conformity to the design. So in airworthiness certification, you have to follow all these two procedures or two process. You need to comply to regulations or to procedure, but then your products, okay, should also conform to specification. Okay, specification, because they need to have some standards in that process, or some standard in the about the products. Okay, and the final definitions, okay, is actually when we don't have any operations, it is safe. Okay, but again, this is not necessarily so. This is one example. I don't know whether you you recognize delivery. Anybody knows about this airplane? These airlines? Hello?
Yeah. Hello?
Anybody know about the delivery of the airlines? What airline is it?
Is it, hello?
Yes.
Is it CityLink?
Yes, you're quite right. Okay, and this is actually in Denpasar, and one CityLink aircraft is actually in parking conditions. Okay, but the other one is actually on taxi, so moving around. But then the tip of the one aircraft is actually scratching, okay, and rupture the wing of the other aircraft. Okay, so because the separation is not enough, normally we have actually at least about 3 meters of separation between one aircraft to the others. But these times, I think it got stuck, and I think it cost CityLink, if I'm not mistaken, it's about maybe about 500,000 dollars for this. Okay, so one rupture, and the other one, of course, also have a damage as well. Okay, so there is no operations, okay, but still you still have accidents. I don't know whether you heard somebody. I think I got it from WhatsApp groups, okay, because one aircraft is actually parked in the aprons in Jakarta, but sorry, is it? No, it's not in Jakarta. I forgot where it is. But the ground movements, okay, the ground movement wasn't really careful, so it really hit the aircraft, which is already in a parking seat condition. Okay, and it creates damage. And again, even though we have no operations, okay, but we still have some accidents, and that's again because we are not careful. We have lots of unattended work errors, and that's what we call latent conditions, and that's why we have incidents and accidents. Okay. Okay, so I think we finished about the flight definitions, flight safety definitions. So we still have about maybe 25 minutes to complete the course. So just in case you have any question about any of the definitions.
Pak, saya ada pertanyaan, Pak.
Yes.
My name is Muhammad Abdul Malik. I'm not quite sure still about the conformity and compliance, terutama yang conformity, Pak.
Yeah, conformity is a bit difficult. Say, for example, we are talking about ITB lah. Okay, this is program studi teknik dirgantara. Okay, so regulations say that maybe when you are complying about accreditations, okay, to become accredited, so we look at the curriculum, right? And that's part of the curriculum. So the curriculums will take place of some list of lectures with SKS, and normally in that situation, and they will see that, okay, and that has to have certains, and we have that. Okay, the regulation said that the minimum will be a certain SKS, and that it could be the around maybe about maximum of say, for example, if I'm not mistaken, it's about maybe about seven years, about 14 semester. Is it right? So when they look at it, they will be able to comply with all the regulations. They follow everything just exactly. Okay, so they have the guidelines and they have the regulations, and they follow it, and this is quite clear, and that's what we call a compliance. Okay, but conformity is a little bit different. Now we are talking about the products. So in this case, the product of the curriculums is actually the graduates. Is it right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So now, when we look at the curriculums, okay, we look at when we talk about conformity, we now actually compare the products or the article with the specifications. Okay, so within the curriculum, you are expected to have some knowledge about aerodynamics. Is it right?
Benar, Pak.
Okay, so now maybe the examiner, maybe from Ministry of Education, they look at you and they interview you. Okay, and they see, okay, they ask you questions, whether one example, they will see that whether you understand the lecture. Okay, maybe they look at your mark. Okay, it will say about that you have grade B for aerodynamics, for example, and then they think about, okay, they interview you, maybe not only you, but maybe some of the graduates or some of the students who already passed the lecture. Okay, if you think that mark correspond to your own knowledge, I think it's conforming. Is that right? You are testing the products or the article to a certain specification. Okay, or maybe one way of doing that, if they want to make sure, one example is actually about the executions, how the curriculum is executed. Okay, you see that, okay, and then they say, okay, airworthiness class is supposed to be taught by 2 lecturers, okay, in series. Okay, one is called Pak Hisar, and the other one is actually Pak Javed. And so maybe the examiner will ask some students, okay, when you attended this course, okay, is it delivered by Pak Hisar and Pak Javan as it is written in the curriculum? And you say, okay, yes, I attended one and it was delivered. So it's confirmed, right? Okay, and they will ask you another question, for example. Okay, it says that the course will be delivered in 14 weeks. And they will say, is it exactly? Yes. And then it's confirming. Okay. That's conformity. You are comparing the products, okay, the products to the design, to the specification of the design. Understand?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the explanation.
So this is, I think the example is a bit fake. Say, for example, I think we are talking about the airplane. Okay. So the design is actually you draw it and then you make some calculation and then you make some analysis. For example, you do some testing, and this is some means of compliance, making sure that you follow the regulation. Okay, so this is what we call compliance. But then you produce the airplanes, you have some wing, okay, and then the wings can be, and then you need to show conformity of the wing. So one example of showing conformity, you look at the drawings, okay, because the drawing consists of the shape of the wing and also the dimension and also the materials of the wing, and you see, okay, is the wing is actually exactly the same as the specification of the design. Will it look like as drawn? Will it like will it has dimension as it is written in the drawings? Will it have material as it is written in the drawings? Say, the drawing will say that it's made of aluminium 2024 T3, for example, and you see that, okay, the wing is actually manufactured in using that material. Okay, and that's conformity. Okay, understand?
Baik, Pak Hisar. Terima kasih.
Okay. Any more questions? I think we are going to talk about conformity later, so don't worry. But I just want you to really understand the concepts and the definition, because these two terms we are going to keep repeating throughout the courses. Okay, conformity and compliance and conformity. Okay, so anyway, so we come to the definitions. What is actually airworthy? Okay, airworthy, based on definition by dictionary, Webster New World Dictionary, it said that actually it's fit and safe for flight, and the words is actually applied to aircraft. So meaning that if it is airworthy, meaning that the aircraft is fit and also it is safe for flying. So there will be two conditions here. One, it is fit, okay, and then the other one is actually in safe condition for flying. And this actually fit, what does it mean? Based on the same dictionary, will say that fit meaning that it has quality. It has quality or meeting qualifications that meets some condition, circumstance, that means that some purpose or some demand. So when we talk about fit, I think it will satisfy some qualifications. So if you are considered fit and healthy, maybe they will say, okay, you can run maybe about at least 3 kilometers in 30 minutes. Okay, if you cannot run that distance in 30 minutes, you are not fit enough. Okay, so there will be some qualities and some qualifications that you need to meet in order for you to be called fit. Okay, or maybe by the end of the 30 minutes when you are running, I think you are not losing your breath. Okay, understand? So this is what we call fit. So when we call an airplane is fit, I think it will fulfill some quality and requirements, okay? And that requirement will be set, of course, by the standards, and also that requirement with will be set by the operational requirement or operational conditions, okay? And the second one is actually what we call safe. And as we understand by some definition that we have discussed, is actually when we call safe, we have freedom from damage, freedom from danger, even what we call from hazard and risk, okay, or of damage or any injury, okay. So it's free from any hazard that will create some danger, and of course it will be free from any risk that might be that might lead to damage, okay. This is what we call safe. Or sometimes these words can also be applied for something in which you are not very you don't feel apprehensions, we don't have to worry, we don't have to merasa was-was, okay. And that's one. If you feel that you are worried and maybe you are afraid, and that means it is not safe, okay. So you feel confidence that it is nothing to worry, because now you don't have any risk whatsoever, or maybe or the risk can be quite acceptable. Acceptable means that maybe because the frequency is quite low, but also because you have some other means to overcome the situation just in case it happens, okay. Just in case it happens, okay. So when we apply to this airworthiness, meaning for the airplane, this is actually a property of practical air system configurations for it to be able to sustain and terminate flight, okay, in accordance to the approved usage and limits. So there should be some approved usage and limits. So you don't actually operate the aircraft as freely as possible, okay. So if you are a piston aircraft airplanes, okay, a piston aircraft supposed to be only having something like some speed of maximum about 150 knots and capable of flying maximum about 6,000 feet above the ground, and then it could also be able to maneuver until maybe about 2,200 nautical miles. So when you actually try to operate the airplane outside the limitations, of course, it could not be done safely. You might danger. So this is what we call it. And then, so, but as long as you are operating under that prescribed operating conditions, I think it is going to be safe, okay. And that's what we call airworthy. So airworthy has limitations, okay. You cannot, and that will be based on the specification that and operating limitation that you put in the manual, okay. Any questions about this definitions? So I have to, okay, I have to charge my battery. Okay, so certify, because we are talking about certification, is actually to confirm, to verify, endorse, and officially state. it is a declaration. And normally over here, the declaration is by giving a certificate. And that declaration is that we are sure that the products or the things that we are declaring is actually true and correct or in order. And of course, it could be some process because of that we are measuring and testing the aircraft to a certain criteria and requirements. And that's why we call it certified. Okay. The nouns is actually certification. This is talking about WEC certification, certifying, or the state of being certified. Okay, so when we talk about airworthiness certification, that will be related to the process of how confirming and verifying the airworthiness of an airplane. Okay. Okay. So, as I said, there will be two terms or two process, actually compliance process, okay, compliance process, okay, and the second one is actually and that will be applied to product, organization, company, and then we call it airworthy, okay, airworthy, meaning that it is safe and fit and safe for flying. Okay. Any question about the definitions? Hello?
I don't think I have a question, sir.
Okay. So actually the purpose of certification, of course, to maintain safety, but in many cases, I think people have general opinions. They are not very, they don't like it because sometimes in many cases it's quite tedious. I know somebody who is actually a lecturer of ITB, and even in fact is senior. I think he is against of certification. I don't know why. And I found it really strange in a way. He is supposed to be the one who actually in support of certifications, but they think that certification is actually one way in which you are actually try to block other people movement. So he doesn't trust any certification. Okay, but actually as we see in this class, certification is actually one way of maintaining quality, okay, of your operation or quality of your products in order for it to be, and that up to a certain standards, and the standard can be a safety, level. Okay, so and in this case, I think this is the premise that we are adopting, because certification is actually one way of guarantee of you being able to maintain quality or performance standards in terms of safety, okay, and that's the only way in which you can actually have bearing in your business. As we discussed in the video yesterday, I think if it is not safe, you cannot sell it. Okay, so certification is actually one way of convincing your customer or your market that your product is good. So if you don't like certifications, I think it's very difficult for you to actually survive in this business, especially in aviation business. Okay, so and this is one example. Okay, and my people think about some situation that will be, what do you think about certification? Anybody? Based on my explanation, anybody think about anything?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
After I get your explanation, I think the certification is the one of the best procedure to meet the requirement of the airplanes and measure the safety of the airplanes. But I want to ask a question to you,
Yes.
So if there's an accident like we saw before, is there an action or a penalty to the one who gives a certification? Because I think if airplane already passed the certification, it must be safe to mass produce it. If there's a penalty that the one who give the certification gets, or there's none. Thank you.
Okay, I think the spirit of accident investigation is not to punish. Okay, that's the spirit. We want to learn from that experience, because if the spirit is punishable, okay, to punish somebody, nobody is going to speak up. Nobody is going to be open about what's really the problem. Okay, so if I ask you something, did you do that, and otherwise I will punish you, I don't think that you will admit your mistake. Is it right?
Yes.
But, so without admissions, there won't be any lessons. All these work errors will be hidden. We cannot learn from it. So actually, the investigation is supposed to be maybe exploring, and then try to or make everything that is hidden to resurface. Okay, so this is the idea. But of course, we have to understand, we have to identify what is the cause of the problem. Okay, we need to understand. That's why we really have to understand the situation, so we can find what is the probable factors that leads to the accident, that contribute the accident. And I have to say, not all of them actually related to the certification. Okay, sometimes it could be because, okay, the regulation is okay, the process of certification okay, but somehow people are not following that procedure. Okay, and then of course we have to issue what we call safety recommendation and also safety actions. We ask them to actually do something to improve the situation. Okay, so this is the thing, based on lesson. But as an investigator, we are not punishing anybody. But of course, that report published by KNKT, for example, or by NTSB of United States can be, of course, can be collected and studied by the DGCA of FAA, and then maybe they will learn something. Oh, I have to do something about it. So they might need some safety, what we call directives, and they will be able to remind the operator or even the industry, the manufacturer, of any wrongdoings that they make. And of course, since the DGCA of Indonesia, Kementerian Perhubungan, they have what we call authoritative power. They will be able to enforce law and regulation, and they can give penalty, and they even give punishment. Okay, because based on the undang-undang or by the regulations, it's punishable. Okay, but the investigator, KNKT, are not punishing anybody. Okay, because we have a different spirit. Okay. Anything? So okay, so these are some some opinions, okay, they will say, okay, I will have a secure job because I have to make sure that everything has safety and we can maintain operation for a long time. So I won't lose any job for foreseeable future. Okay. And some people, okay, it's expensive. It costs money. Of course, it's expensive. And that's why I think one of the reasons why my colleague, the one I told you, the Dosen of ITB and Teknik Dirgantara, always disagree with me because he doesn't believe about certification. He thought it was only burdensome, okay, because it costs a lot of money. And of course, it takes a long time, okay, takes a long time. For certification of aircraft, if it's a large one like CN235 and Boeing 737 up to Airbus 380, it takes at least about 5 years to certify an airplane. And for smaller one like N219, it takes about 3 years. And even so, if you see that N219 takes about 5 years to really complete the certification. It takes longer than planned. Okay, so people think about it, and some people, I think maybe he attended our course, okay, of airworthiness, and they said, okay, we have to do that because this is our responsibility. Okay, and of course it's secure flight safety, some come the other, and also I got past the test. So these are some different opinions, and I'm sure many of you have different opinion about it, but hopefully, I think by understanding the purpose of airworthiness, I think you come to conclusion that this is important, okay, and this is necessary, okay, even this is one of the prerequisites, one of the requirement that needs to be followed by anybody who are involving in the business of aviations to follow. So we need certification, okay? And this is one of the reasons why I create these lectures long time ago, because I thought this is quite important for many of you, and not only many of you, but all of you, okay? So we still have some, I think about 2 slides, but I think you just complete this. This is actually about airplane developments, but I'm going to teach it, maybe explain it later. It doesn't matter. So next week, I think we are going to start with the new, I think is it airworthiness regulation, Pak Javin?
No, Pak Hisar, I think it's a new topic. Let me check first.
I think it's airworthiness regulation, right?
Just let me check first. Yes, airworthiness regulation, yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised that because you asked the student to read it today, because it's not supposed to be delivered. So maybe it was a mistake by us. So that material will be delivered maybe next week. So, but it's good if you have read it, and that's also good as well. Okay. So next week we are talking about some regulations, and okay, and I think Pak Javan is going to explain it to you. Okay. So again, I have to remind you, next week we start classes at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock until 1 o'clock. And then on Tuesday, we have only one hour from 7 to 8. Okay. So hopefully you enjoy the lectures today. And if you have any question, just feel free, and just you can use MS Teams, or you can, I don't know, I think, is it also possible using the EduNext as well? Okay. Okay, I have to stop because I think we already passed 4 minutes past 9 o'clock. Okay. So see you all next week.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.